And now let's swing gears for a second, and we're going to have a great lived experience moment here to talk about bringing all of those kinds of tent poles that we just talked about getting to the right education and understanding the disease, willing to learn more, being patient but persistent, asking the right questions, and knowing your rights along the way. So I'm excited to have someone join us that is going to be an absolute joy for you guys to meet, and welcome Melody Harding McRae for our next session. There she is. Oh gosh, I haven't seen your face in so long. It's so lovely to see
Very
you.
long
Yay.
time.
It has been. This is fantastic. So, just I'm going to introduce people to you lightly and then pass it over to you, my friend. So, as a patient advocate, Melody is committed to challenging existing norms for more inclusive and supportive healthcare systems. Having lived with mental health and physical challenges of her own, Mel also understands firsthand the challenges individuals face living with obesity. Most notably, Melody worked to challenge the province of Nova Scotia, resulting in a positive change to its antiquated and very biased criteria for government-funded breast reduction. She lives in Nova Scotia. She's a fantastic human. I can't wait for you guys to meet her. I'm going to let you say hello and introduce yourself for a moment.
Back at you, Lisa.
Thanks, love.
So lovely to see you.
Hmm.
Um, so just wanted to mention quickly that I am in Nova Scotia. I'm speaking from the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Um, Very important that I wanted to mention that that's where I am. Uh,
Thank you. It is. It's
so
so
when
important. I
I
love doing them.
when my mom was actually, we're going to go way back, when my mom was pregnant with me, right from the get-go, um she measured big. I was big. They thought I was, back then in the 80s, they didn't have the same sort of testing that we have now. So they just, I guess, assumed I was going to be a boy because I guess I was just huge. When I was born, I was off the charts. Growing up, I was always the tallest kid in class all through elementary school. Um, Started to develop my chest. Sorry, guys, my computer's sliding here. Sorry. Started to develop a chest when I was in grade 4. And by grade 6, I was already wearing a double D, which, when all my friends were in pretty little training bras, was devastating. I was already the biggest person in my class. Not so much weight, but just body size. I was tall, I was broad. Um, just a larger built human being. Um, Puberty hit, and I just I grew a little taller, but I started to develop in ways that was very distressing to me. Um, my chest was growing like crazy. I grew hips, I gained weight, I was just growing like crazy. Um, Growing pains, the whole works. Um, my chest continued to grow. Even when my weight stabilized, I grew and I grew. And by the time I graduated high school, I was, I remember trying to find a bra to wear with my prom dress and breaking down in the change room, um, and just not understanding why I couldn't be like everybody else, like my peers.
Hmm.
That continued through graduation. When I was 16, I asked about a breast reduction. I was told I was still growing, wasn't going to happen. Got to university in Newfoundland, asked the university clinic doctor the same thing. You're still growing. Wait until you're done school. So when I finished university, I thought I knew everything. I moved to Toronto, and then I lived in Nunavut, and then eventually I found my way back to Nova Scotia, my homeland. Um, And I asked my doctor about it then, and he said, unfortunately, I can't even refer you to a plastic surgeon because you need to have a BMI of 27 or less. I hadn't been a BMI of 27 or less probably since like grade 10. Again, having a larger body, um, very tall. I grew up in a rural area, lots of, outdoor work, splitting wood with my dad. Like,
Hmm.
I was not a tiny human being. It wasn't going to happen. So I just kind of let it lie for a little bit. Um, Come summer 2017, my mom sent me a message when I was at work one day and said she had just come from her doctor who told her that the numbness she was experiencing in her hands could largely or at least partially be due to the years of carrying around her large breasts.
Hmm.
It was very much a hereditary thing in my family, or it is. Um, so she's had two back surgeries, well, three, one being a fusion. She's got permanent indentations in her shoulders, but her BMI is too high, so no surgery. I That was kind of the trigger point for me. She was 23 when I was born, so I was kind of staring my future down in a way. I could see where I was headed. Uh, so I
And that
sent
nobody really wanted to care.
No, no, it had been that way for so long. Someone had tried about 10 years prior to reduce the amount that had to be removed per breast, but that didn't really go anywhere. Um, so I wrote a strongly, I guess not strongly worded, more of a pleading letter to the then health minister for Nova Scotia saying, this is the situation, this is what's going on, it's time for these measurements to change, for this criteria. BMI is not an appropriate measurement of health. Weeks went by, nothing. Me being a millennial, I took to Twitter and started tweeting
Being squeaky.
and tagging everybody I could think of, um, including the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. Eventually, I don't know if they just decided that they didn't want me to be tagging them anymore and I should do something about it or what, but someone from there wrote and said, have you actually submitted a complaint? And so I thought about it and I thought, what am I going to lose? The worst they could say
Yep.
is no, and then I can appeal their no. Um,
Mhm.
so I submitted it and waited and waited and waited. And lo and behold, they accepted the complaint under two different protected groups. Um, So that was a very long process. Lots of research, a lot of tears, a lot of support from wonderful people, including folks at Obesity Canada, Dr. Sharma, Dr. Vallis, um, Ian and Lisa. You guys were amazing help for me. My own family doctor, Dr. Finley Spicer, my now husband. We were newly dating when this all started, and he stuck by me through all of it. But I couldn't have done it without the support, but it still felt very alone, very
Mm.
hard because here I am, just me, against the government. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I was spending all my free time researching. I look back at my rebuttals now and I'm a little embarrassed at the things I wrote, but it was a while ago. But either
It
way,
worked also.
it worked. I was actually staring down a board of inquiry. It was the final step that we had to go through. And I found out that I was going to have to pay for expert witnesses, probably a lawyer, unless I wanted to wing it myself. And I just thought, I can't, I can't afford it. I can't for my own mental health. I just couldn't do it. So I, with the help of a lawyer, who offered me some time for free, God bless her, she helped me draft up a settlement offer, which they did accept. So instead of having the criteria as 27, a BMI of 27 or less, now it's case by case basis. And that, so I started summer 2017. It went out in a bulletin in April 2019. And I went to my doctor a couple weeks later and got myself a referral to a surgeon. My doctor and I high-fived. Uh,
As you should. So let's take a breath and say that again louder for the people in the back as well. So as a result of your being squeaky and advocating for yourself, the system truly changed.
yeah.
Girl,
I don't think it, even to this day, I don't think, what is it, 5 years, oh, 5 years later
I know
almost,
time is soup.
it
Yeah.
still doesn't compute
Hmm.
that that's what came out of it.
I have to say, and in the background, and I'll let you finish because I know there's a bit more to your story, but I have to say that, my from my own personal experience over here, I know as women we are navigating like so much. Insert Gloria's monologue from the Barbie movie, like right here, everybody. Go listen to it and then come back. But it's really hard and it's challenging to work up the nerve to be that vulnerable and ask for help with kind of anything. But the level of intensity when we're asking for help with our physical body is a whole other level of shame and twistiness that is really, really intense. I have navigated now breast reduction surgery myself that I was able to have provincially covered, but it was not easy. And I more than once, honestly, Mel, had in my head that I know that you have done this, that you wrote these letters and that you were able to impact change and to keep going. I had to do the same with my skin removal surgery. And once again, in so much sincerity, my friend, like you were a North Star for me, going, it might not work, but it is worth the time and energy. I am worth it. All of us are worth it. We all deserve better care than that. So I
And
just had
that
to say
was
that out loud to you.
something, congratulations on the surgeries, by the way. That's
Thank you.
amazing. But that is something that was posed to me a couple times throughout the process is what if the province came to you and said, okay, we'll approve it for you. And there's no question. That's not good enough.
Hmm.
Why am I, I'm not special. I'm not more deserving than anybody else who's in the same position. One of the things that I did with my research was I created a poll that people could, there's like 15 questions or so. And I got 40, I think 49 responses from women in Nova Scotia that were in the same boat. They're
Yes.
saying that they couldn't play with their kids, that, heart disease runs in their family and they were worried about their fitness. But it seems like, every time they tried to do something physical, their chest was in the way.
Hmm.
I can remember my dad, like we were learning how to putt and different things in gym class. So my dad took me to do 9 holes for the first time. And I couldn't get around them. I was
Yes,
like having to
I know what you mean, girl.
to get in there to, I couldn't have the proper grip because I had I've often referred to them as tumors because that's what they felt like. They're just figuring lumps hanging, like there's
Mhm.
no, when they're that, when your chest is that big. When I had my surgery, I was a double K, which in US sizes is like an N or an O.
Wow.
And I was in a 34 band, so around is the band. So not a huge rib cage, even though I am a large person. My rib cage
Hmm.
is small. And here I had these huge, heavy lumps changing my center of gravity.
Hmm.
There's issues with, you have to be careful of infection and moisture and skin breakdown, and
Yes,
and
it's
that's not even
awful.
getting into all the things I couldn't wear. And then the self-esteem issues with that, flowing into issues with obesity and
Mhm.
food addiction because of my mental health, and just this huge spiral.
It's a big
And I was
tangly
like,
ball of
I'm not
Christmas
alone in
lights.
this.
Hmm.
What's that?
I said it's like a big tangly ball of Christmas lights, right? All of those factors that are us. And I
Yeah,
completely relate as well about, I had a sister who was 2 years older than me. And the day that my mom went to go get her training bar, I was like, you're coming too. And like I was in the fourth grade.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
you're not getting a cute bra from La Senza back then either. You're getting that nice box with a big old bra with 10 hooks. And it's like, it's a really harsh introduction. And we mentioned this earlier in some previous sessions as well. It's another one of those moments where we're just robbed of small moments of dignity along the way as
yeah,
well. It's
yeah,
it's really, and it also was, similar to you, I was often the biggest kid in class. Add to that, now I'm wearing a bra in the fourth grade, and boys being boys, all of those kinds of things. Like, kids are cruel. We know that. Humans can be quite cruel to each other as well. So it all
yeah.
comes into play.
I remember that first underwire too, because I had been living in hoodies and in my winter coat and just
Hmm.
trying to hide my body. And like, I mean, if I had known binders existed, I probably would have tried, if that was an option, I probably would have even tried that, because I was so embarrassed and just mortified about my body being so different.
Hmm.
And I remember getting that first underwire, and that the separation and lift and everything that brings. And all I could imagine when I looked down was Madonna's torpedo bra.
Yes.
Like I
Yeah.
felt like I was, that's after being, smushed in for so long, having proper support, and, having it look like I had two breasts and not just one. Uh,
And we're
I just
10
felt like
and we don't know
everybody
what to
was
do with
looking at
these.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like everybody is looking at me. And oh, I pity my poor father. My mom left just before I turned 11, so my poor dad had to deal with all of this, and thank God my stepmom came into our lives. God bless her.
Right. It's all about the care and the
But
people
yeah,
around
it's
us. But
yeah, it
but let's
just
talk as well, because I know once you so we made a change, but it's also still not rosy after that, is it?
no. So my doctor, like I said, we high-fived. He did put in the referral and sent me to a plastic surgeon. He said, I'm going to send you to this plastic surgeon. It's the one that the nurses would go to if they were going to have a breast reduction. Like it was the one that the professionals, like he was a really trusted, and he had been around a long time. And it was somebody who was well known for his results. And I had heard not so positive things about his bedside manner, but open mind, everybody has their ways. So
Mhm.
I went in with my stack of research, including um, research papers that he had contributed to. His name was on them. And he wouldn't look at them. He wouldn't look at me. I sat in the chair in the examining room with my coat on, and asked him before I left. I said, "So you don't even want to examine me?" And I'm bawling by that point. And he said, "No." He had looked at the BMI on the paper. He knew that I had challenged the criteria, and I reminded him that the criteria had changed. But he said no. He said that earlier that morning they had all sat down, all the plastic surgeons, and had agreed that they were not going to do surgery on anybody with a BMI under 32. And I said, that is not the criteria. And so, me blubbering away, because I'm a big crybaby, He
You're
said,
a
okay,
human.
fine.
You're a human.
He said, I will refer you to an anesthesiologist and get their opinion as far as like my airway and
Hmm.
safety for surgery. Another month or several weeks went by, and I went to see this anesthesiologist, and he said, so why are you here? And I explained, and he looked at the paper and he looked at my airway and asked me about previous surgeries I'd had. And he said, yeah, I don't see what the problem is. So I headed home. And it wasn't a day later, I got a call from the surgeon's receptionist saying they forgot to ask you questions. We need you to go back in. A week later, went back in, saw a different anesthesiologist because they're on rotation. And he said, they didn't put any notes here. I don't see any issues. You never had any problem with previous surgeries. I trust my colleague. I'm going to sign off on this too. I don't see what the problem is. He was frustrated, annoyed. I felt bad for taking up his time when he could be seeing people who are waiting,
Hmm.
imminent surgeries. Sent me home, went back in to see said surgeon again, and he said, well, why are you here? And I brought him up to speed. And my theory, I don't know if this is true or not, but my theory is that they were hoping that between the two different anesthesiologists, somebody was going to say her BMI is too high for surgery. Didn't work out that way. So he said, I'm going to refer you to the head of plastic surgery for Dalhousie University. And who kind of, they're the ones that man the hospital here in
Hmm.
Halifax. And I was referred to this surgeon. He examined me in the office that day. He talked with me about the concerns that I had. He had someone training in there with him and explained to her that, this is what's been going on. He knew about the human rights complaint and everything. He actually thanked me, which was crazy, for helping make those changes. And we filled out the paperwork that day asking the province to approve me. Um, it took a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden, one Friday morning, I got a phone call and said, do you want to have your surgery a week from today?
Isn't that a crazy feeling? And then you're
So,
like, is this
yeah,
real? And
it
you don't want to
was.
unclench until you're like literally in the operating room.
I was literally on the table cracking jokes. And like they blew a vein and they had to go over the other arm. And I don't like IVs. I hate them. Didn't matter. I was so happy to be there. So happy to be there. Um, the reduction was, I think all told, it was 2.6 kgs were removed of tissue. Um, and that still only brought me down to a triple D. So, I ideally I wanted to see, but that's what I
Was that
got.
too much tissue to take? Is that what the factor was, or
What's that? Sorry?
how did they decide, or how did you end up at that size?
As far as I understand, it depends on how wide the root of your breast is, so on
Mm,
your
okay.
chest wall.
Hmm.
Um, and I think they also factor in, again, I am not a small body.
Hmm.
Um, but I think a lot of it has to do with the root of, and they can only remove so much tissue at a time, and all of those factors into it. So, um, but yeah, if I say down the road, just because of obesity, and if I were to have a child and hormone changes and stuff, if I ever wanted another one, I would have to pay for it out of pocket. But even with that, I mean, probably, hopefully down the road, if I am able to have a child, if that is something I need to do, then that is something that I will swallow. But the cost of that, but for now, it gives me a fighting chance. I feel like
Hmm.
I've got scoliosis. I've got lipedema. I've got obesity, obviously. My mental health issues. I've got multiple diagnoses there. I just have a lot working
Mhm.
against me, and I'm trying to learn how to work in harmony with those things versus,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know, just giving up, which is really easy to do with depression and all of that.
Mhm.
So,
We definitely have touched on that today too, that it takes courage, it takes fortitude for anybody to show up in these moments. And then when we've been steeped in this culture of diet culture and these internal bias that we have against ourselves,
yeah.
oh, it's exhausting. But Ian, I know you're here because you have something to say or something from the community. So I'd love to hear
Yeah,
that.
I just wanted to jump in. I know we're getting close on time, but I was listening here intently, and I wanted Mel, I wanted you to know that the reason why we reached out to you and why we asked you to come and share this experience, and thank you again. It was incredibly brave. It's a incredibly strong story that I think everyone should hear, and I'm really glad you came on. But the reason why we wanted to bring you on and to talk about this is because it's a story of incredible perseverance. Like you had to continually fight for something and you stuck through it and you ended up getting the care that you needed, and it wasn't all sunshine and roses. It was challenging, it was difficult, but I wanted our community to see that it can happen, right? Like I get emails, I get people talking to me all the time about the challenges. It might not be the same challenge as you. It might be with a different type of access to care or different access to treatment. And people are always struggling with hitting those walls. And I think, there's going to have to be some of us that stand up like yourself and push through those
Mhm.
walls. And hopefully that makes it easier for the next one to come. And it won't be as difficult for the person that has to fight for the same thing that you fought for. So thank you for that. Um, but I really wanted our community to see that these things are possible and we can work together. And like Obesity Canada, we can help and we'll do our best to support these things. But again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And really glad you came on.
It's so
And
important. It's a
honestly, I
precedent. You set a precedent in Canada.
yeah, that's so weird.
Take it.
It's so
Take
weird
it.
to think about. But it's like I say, it was me, my name was on it, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without that support from my family doctor, from the support from I somehow I got myself on the current with Anne Marie Tremonti and Dr. Sharma. Like, I,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I've had a love of the CBC since I was little, and I just blows my mind, to go back and think about that. And things Dr. Sharma said just kind of reaffirmed what I was doing. And getting to know the two of you, and I mentioned Dr. Vallis and Dr. Sarah Kirk, with Dalhousie, and just so many people in my corner. And I couldn't
Yeah.
have done it without the support. So, it's a community thing, and the work
Mm-hmm.
that you guys do is just it's so incredibly valuable. So thank you. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for all of those kind words and for coming today and really sharing something really vulnerable, but something, as Ian said, something that's really important. And really is a shining example of all the things that we've been talking about this morning. And you've given us a building block. You've given us a building block that we can point to, that we can build off of, and a moment of change that really should shape a lot of the future for us. So thank you. I hope you and Anthony and the pets and the
Thank
hounds and the dogs and the cats and everybody is well out in Nova Scotia. Take good care of you. And with that, we're ready for our second break of the day. So I'll remind everybody again. Bye, honey.